Hello. Welcome to another episode of Memory and Engagement Opportunity for Wellness. My name is Michelle Haub. And I'm a speech language pathologist and the leader for the Metalurg Special Program. Thank you for joining me today. The purpose of this opportunity is to help engage and attend information and to try something new. Also, we are reconnecting with something that we talked about last week, reviewing some information and refreshing some new ideas. So to start off with, let's talk about how did you do when you called someone and shared a recipe, or how to build sequentially. So last week we began our introduction into organizing. This is a key component for language and memory. So we talked about keeping things in sequential opportunities. So your homework, as it says here, was to call someone, either describe a recipe, tell them how to build something. I hope you took advantage of this opportunity to reach out to others, especially during this time of more isolation. It's important not only for us to practice the skills we learn in this opportunity, but also to connect with people outside of our visible circle. The next thing we're going to talk about is sleep. Last week we talked a little bit about red wine and the possible benefits of red wine in your daily diet. We talked that there were some more risks than good outcomes. And doing it all in moderation. So sleep is another part of daily life that can influence your memory. The thing we want to think about is that sleep is the time where your brain files and organizes and gets rid of things that it doesn't need to remember. So it's kind of the filing time, where it's putting the memories into the spaces that they belong. So how do we optimize our sleep? We know that it's critical. Not only our mood and our attitude, but also for how we feel and how we want to engage. And then, as we just mentioned, it also helps our brain with memories. The thing that we want to watch is our rest time. We all appreciate and enjoy naps, every one of us. The thing that we have to watch is how long of a nap do we take? Typically, about a 20 to 30 minute nap, even less, can be really beneficial for giving you that rejuvenation during your day. We really want to try to avoid naps that are longer than 30 minutes, particularly into the couple hours during the day for sleeping. That's not ideal for helping us maximize our sleep time at night. The other thing you want to think about is the timing of your nap and when trying to avoid naps later in the day that you are more tired at night. Also, limiting screen time, especially towards the evening. The lighting, the blue lights from the screens can make it more difficult to fall asleep. And also, a lot of times people want to bring screens, whether it's TVs, whether it's computers or tablets, into the bedroom. And ideally, we want to keep the sleep space only for sleeping. To preserve for the mindset falling falling asleep.
So again, keeping the screen time in the later evenings when it's time to start the bedtime routine. At a minimum, to decrease some of that stimulation that the brain is receiving from those blue lights. Another quick thought here. When it comes to sleep, if you wake up in the middle of the night, you can't fall back to sleep. You resist the urge of grabbing that electronic device, whether it's your phone or you turn on the TV in bed. Because again, those things can interfere with your mindset of falling asleep. So just limiting screen time. Another thing to think about, which I'm sure the majority of you think of, that having this concept refreshed is good. To drink the majority of your liquids earlier in the day. This will help to hopefully decrease the need and urgency of needing to use the restroom in the middle of the night. Sometimes getting back to sleep after getting up to go to the bathroom is a tricky thing. So if we can focus on drinking the majority of our liquids earlier in the day, can help with a better night's sleep. Again, in summary, sleep is important. Critical for our memory. Our brains need that time and to clean out things that aren't needed. So last week we talked about sequencing. The concept with sequencing in memory is multifold actually. But what we're wanting to do is really pay attention to specific steps. When we get into a hurry, try to tell somebody to do something, or we try to remember how to do something, then we may leave out very key elements to the process that we're trying to either remember or describe. So what we're focusing on are small, specific. And you may think by the end of the session that it's a little overkill. But I hope that you will see the benefits and how it can help with your memory and recall. We're also going to be talking about describing with sensory words. As with our daily recall of events, if we can remember things and describe using sensory words, feel, touch, smell, those types of things help us to recall, and that can also help us in our descriptions, which will help us with memory, or help someone else remember if you're giving instructions to someone else. And lastly, the benefit of sequencing is that it helps assist with visualization. So if we look at the first two, small specific steps and sensory words, I really think about using those types of vocabulary in my descriptions, in my sequencing. I'm going to be able to create a mental image, much better, a complete visualization of what's taking place step by step, than if I just use more generic words, and not really focusing the true concepts of what's happening within that sequence of events. So we're going to try something kind of fun today. In your Meadowlark Messenger from Monday, you found recipe for homemade hummus. This is a very general recipe. Recipes are all written in the vast majority of times. Just listing out what it is, then moving forward. However, if we think about providing instructions to someone who is experiencing memory challenges or language difficulties, or we're really wanting to give instructions to help us remember what we need to get ready for this opportunity of making homemade hummus. We need to be very specific. So Here is our recipe that we're looking at. We have 7 descriptions.
We don't have really very many descriptive words in here.
Smooth maybe is one of the words that we have.
Some cooking terms like mince and zest.
We're not really breaking it down into
sequencing, of course, is very good.
So now let's take a look at
how could we do this?
How could we do this?
If we were going to be giving specific instructions
to somebody on how to make this recipe.
We will want to start from the very beginning.
That would mean
getting a small pan,
and blender out of the cabinet.
So now let's just think about this first instruction.
And at what we mentioned. Let me go back
here. Our component of sequencing with details.
Specific steps.
We are taking that
very first step.
Opening up the
cabinet in the
then
kitchen.
We're going to pull out
a small pan
using our sensory words.
And the blender.
So those
descriptions,
that very specific description
helps us to create
that mental image of what we are going to need.
It's also going to create a very clear boundary
of your workspace,
and
what you're going to be doing
throughout this cooking
event, I guess.
Time.
Okay. So then we're going to turn on the stove
to a medium heat.
Pour the chickpeas
into the medium pan.
And ideally, if we really wanted to be even more specific, we should have said turn on stove to medium
place
heat.
Pan on
Right?
So we want to be
as descriptive as possible.
Then we're going to pour our chickpeas into the medium pan, and I just noticed I have a mix up here. So I first said small pan, and now I'm saying medium pan. Use the pan that fits. Use the pan that fits
in that description or eye of your house.
Then you're going to heat the chickpeas in the pan.
Stir the chickpeas with the wooden spoon
for 5 minutes.
Are you starting to see?
As we're describing.
So here we are.
Can you picture in your mind
what this process looks like? Even with my mix-up
small and medium pans.
Picture
turning on the stove,
pouring in the
chickpeas, stirring with your wooden spoon.
Okay, so visualizing these steps as we go.
Once you've cooked for 5 minutes, you turn off the stove.
You turn off the
and
stove.
then you drain the hot liquid into a sink or canister.
And then you're going to put the chickpeas in the blender.
So you can see
all of these things, and I want you just to take a second and close your eyes
and visualize
each of those steps that
we just talked about.
Getting a blender and a pan out of the cabinet,
turning on the stove,
to medium heat,
pouring the chickpeas
into the pan,
heating the chickpeas in a pan.
While you're heating them,
stir the chickpeas with your wooden spoon
for 5 minutes.
Turn off the stove.
Drain the hot liquid into the sink or canister.
And put the chickpeas in the blender.
Okay, so now you can open your eyes again and hopefully
in your mind
all of those steps
that you were taking in this very specific component of making hummus.
Oops, and I skipped one. Plugging in the blender.
So after you put the chickpeas in,
the blender, plug it in.
All right.
So continuing on, you can see we now have two sections
for our homemade hummus.
Next step is to place the minced garlic and lemon zest in the blender with the cooked peas.
Okay, so we're placing all of those items into the blender.
Then let the warm mixture sit in blender for 5 minutes.
Again, in our original recipe, it just said to let that mixture sit.
But it didn't tell us actually what to do with the chickpeas once we were finished cooking it. And we also did not have the word of the warm mixture. So if we're thinking about that creating pictures in our mind with sensory words, if we use a word like warm, that helps us recall and think about the heating of the chickpeas in our previous step. So we're pulling on one thing to help us build on and recall more later. Then you're going to add these other ingredients, and we're now adding cold water to the blender. Okay, so first we had to just let it sit. It was warm. Then we added cold water. Now we're turning on the blender. And blending until we achieve a smooth texture. Turn off the blender. Then you will pour your smooth hummus in a bowl. So again, we're adding another descriptive words. And lastly, you get to eat with chips or vegetables. So now again, let's practice this sequencing component as I read. The next steps, I want you to close your eyes. Excuse me. And visualize the next steps. So place the minced garlic, and lemon juice in the blender with the cooked chickpeas. Let this warm mixture sit in the blender for 5 minutes. After that 5 minutes, you add your tahini, salt and pepper, and your cold water into the blender. Turn on the blender until you achieve a smooth texture. Turn off the blender. Pour smooth hummus in a bowl. And eat with chips or vegetables. All right, open your eyes again. Did you feel like you were actually eating that nice hummus with your carrots or your celery or your chips? Okay, so as we kind of summarize this, how did they do with sequencing? The details. Again, this isn't a criticism here. This is simply how recipes are written. They had seven instructions. We were able to come up with 16. Now, we could have probably come up with more to be even more descriptive. But from a small specific step, we more than doubled the number of details in order to complete this recipe. Describing with sensory words. We were able to add more temperature, size, type and texture is another word that we added in a little bit more. We added more sensory words to really conceptualize this concept of what each task or each step was. And hopefully you were able to see as you closed your eyes this assisted with your ability to visualize, to visualize, to create in mind's eye of what steps you were taking. So let's take just a minute here, and I want you to try to recall in your mind what sequence we took in order to make this lovely bowl of hummus that you see here. Obviously, they added a little more garnish to it than what we did in our description. So take just a second, or just a minute, and recall the steps. And if you want to, you're welcome to jot these down and we'll review them one more time. Or share with someone else.
Okay, so hopefully that gave you enough time to try to remember those items. Try to remember those items. Back at our now let's look back at our general description. Again, this is a very normal recipe. 7 steps. 7 steps. Review what you had in your mind. What you had in your mind. Maybe what you jotted down. Maybe what you jotted down. And how did you do? Were you able to come up with some of the more descriptive things that we did in our specific breakdown? Did you find yourself going back to more of the general sequence steps? Okay, so hopefully you found that you added in a few more of the specific concepts and some of those sensory words, whether it was warm or cool. That you added those in to help that those words helped you to remember some of your general instruction. So the main goal here is to be thinking about specific words and sensory words, to think about visualization. If I use descriptive words, I can create that visualization. And that improves my memory for that task. Okay. So as we typically like to do, I think it's always valuable to do some writing. So what I want you to do is in your journal, notebook, is to write a memory that you have to do with cooking or baking. So maybe that is a memory of learning how to bake a family recipe. Or maybe it's a crazy chaotic experience that happened as starting your family, tried to make fried chicken for the first time, and you almost caught the kitchen on fire. I'm not speaking from a personal experience at all right there. But jotting down what it was. You have a good memory, a bad memory, a crazy memory. And take some time to go down memory lane. One thing I think is important in our journal is walking down memory lane. It helps us also to practice gratitude. So in my reference to almost burning down the kitchen, the first time I tried to make fried chicken. Then I'm very grateful. I didn't do that. That we were able to under control before things went really bad, and things went really bad, and the whole house on fire. Could have caught the whole house on fire. But it's gratitude for the opportunity to be able to have that cooking experience. It's gratitude for my husband being there and staying calm, getting us through that situation. And it's also gratitude that I don't have to cook chicken anymore. Because I can't be trusted. Think about those things that bring you gratitude. We always want to talk about exercising our brain. Also exercising our body. We haven't said this in a few weeks. What's good for the heart is good for your brain. Exercising your body. Going for a walk. Doing the exercise classes on Channel 1960. Trying something new. Those are good things. That help your brain. Get the new experiences that it needs. Knowing that the brain loves to be challenged. I want you to show your brain some love by writing out a recipe, writing out how to build something. And think about that concept of sequential. So last week, I encouraged you to call someone and describe over the phone how to do a recipe, how to build something. How to build something. We're using verbal communication. Now this week I want you to do something similar, but I want you to write out the specific and step. See how many more words you can add from a descriptive concept, sensory words, sequence, and sequence, step, half a step, a quarter of a step, whatever it is to help you be as specific in your sequence as possible. So until next time, practice your physical distancing, wearing a mask, stay connected with others, giving them a call so you don't have a specific assignment this week of calling someone, but reach out to somebody, give them a call, let them know that you are here, talk about what you wrote in your walk down memory lane. You could always share that with somebody, and be well. I appreciate you taking the time to be with me today. We will see you next time. Have a great week. Bye.